What is privacy, Tom?
That's a great question. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of The Stream, an unscripted conversation with guests who reject the status quo with a bias for action in the world of water and beyond. My name is Tom Freyberg, together with co-host Will Sarni. Will, how are you?
Tom, I'm well. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you. Are you still sane we're into quite a few weeks now into the lockdown?
Of course, that implies that I was sane to begin with. I think a number of folks that know me would question that. We're doing well. Good.
Well, I think for everyone, it's a challenging time, right? So, and part of the reason to do this podcast and the video was to chat and kind of document almost like a video diary of the people we've spoken to and the things we've heard. I see this as kind of almost a stream of consciousness of things that we hear or headlines we see. So what's new in your world the last week or so?
What's new? I think we've seen, well, just to go back to your point, I think this is really important. It's, I think we're clearly not only trying to figure out the world, we're trying to figure out where the world of water and our relationship with water is and where it's going. So sharing data points, I believe, has been one of the most valuable things over the past several weeks in terms of just, reconnecting with people, no agenda, no commercial pitch or anything like that. It's really trying to piece together a puzzle that's never been stitched together before, frankly. So in terms of what I'm saying, I think that it's interesting. We're continuing to see sort of our core business with corporate water strategy work continue. So we're fortunate in that the companies that we have been working for and speaking to are still very committed, if not more committed, to building out their corporate water strategies. Obviously adjusting that to a different world, which includes things like greater engagement with communities, understanding that access to sanitation and hygiene and safe drinking water are even more critical now. And the sort of second bucket, we're seeing a number of companies that are now interested in getting in the water sector that historically have not been in the sector. And my view, of course, is that that's a positive thing, that there's a recognition that, this resource that has been invisible and undervalued has a strategic importance in society and business, and they want to be a player. And then, I think the startup community is challenged, of course, but actually doing pretty well for the companies that we are either informal or formal mentors to. So that's sort of the shifting landscape. And then of course, one of our favorite topics, digital, is taking off. No surprise.
No, I think for everyone, I was reading this morning that Netflix managed to add 16 million subscribers in the first 3 months of the year against a prediction for kind of 6-7 million. I know we'll look at how this comes onto water, but I think in terms of the demand for digital products, the demand for digital entertainment, same, we're hearing about Spotify having a record month. And I think businesses who are rooted in a digital only business with no bricks and mortar infrastructure, perhaps are geared up well for what's arguably going to be a huge economic downturn coming up.
Well, I agree with you, but to give you just a little bit of a counterpoint, what at least I'm seeing is that there is a bit of a return to handwriting letters and typing letters and phone calls. So there's the dichotomy between, yes, we're absolutely embracing digital because we've lost to a pretty significant degree that face-to-face communication, but a little bit of a retro return to, I think I will take pen in hand and write a letter to somebody or type a letter to someone. So it's this sort of interesting
shift, you could say, a shift back to traditional forms of communication. And I think there's something there because I'm trying to switch some of what are Zoom calls or video calls or WebEx or Teams back to telephone calls, which are quite nice actually, because I shared an article from Nat Geo that's saying Zoom fatigue is real, and it sounds a bit melodramatic, but there is some kind of research into this that's saying that when we're face to face with people in a meeting, we subconsciously pick up body language and cues that are just part of conversation and human interaction. But when you're doing it via an online video conferencing program and you've got multiple people looking at you, you're trying to read how people are responding to what you're saying, and that kind of requires more mental energy than if you're doing it face to face. So I think it's been incredible to see how people and companies are adapting and increasing the amount of video conferencing to get projects done. But I think it's also nice to go back to a traditional phone call, or like you say, handwritten letters.
So it's, for me, it's easier to walk around the condo on a phone call than it is a Zoom call. So, I've got to get my steps in a day. So I'm trying to manage the video conferencing quality time against everything else. But yeah, I mean, it's a very transformative time, tragic in a lot of ways, but also, a wake-up call. And you and I have talked about this, basically it's an opportunity to reboot. It's what was good about 3 months ago, what was not good 3 months ago, and how do we get rid of what was not good and really build a very different society. Yeah,
no, I think you're right. But on the topic of digital, because we've talked about how, and we'll talk a bit about kind of coming into water, but I think the subject that I'm seeing more and more of is about this contact tracing. I don't know if you've seen much about this. Is a way of basically using GPS data and Bluetooth on phones so that it will basically tell you if you've come into contact with anyone who's had coronavirus symptoms. And to kind of put that into perspective, say I was to get a bus into my local city, basically everyone on that bus, socially distanced, would their phones would interact with each other to know that that's been the journey. And then if someone was to report symptoms for COVID-19 on that bus through the app, then the people on that bus would automatically get a message to say, look, you've been in contact, you should quarantine. So I think this throws up some interesting discussions, and we've all seen the headlines about privacy, right? If we're willing to fully relinquish even more control on privacy, this could enable people to get back to work quicker. And again, this is all rooted on data and technology and arguably the software within the phones as well.
So what is privacy, Tom?
That's a great question. I think I'm
teasing a little bit. It's
no, I think you're right, because so you're saying that by using your mobile phone, by a smartphone, by using social media, people are arguably giving up certain degrees of privacy anyway, right?
Well, I think we have to put it in, into this perspective of, is tracking and traceability to manage a pandemic of value to civil society? And, do you embrace that? Or do you challenge that? And on the other hand, you post everything on social media thinking that, it's okay. I mean, I don't know. I see a bit of a contradiction here.
No, it's a fine line to draw in the sand, isn't it? Because if you look at the nations that have been quoted as successfully handling the crisis, like South Korea, parts of Singapore, they've kind of used this similar technology. I mean, I saw something on the news the other day about in parts of China, there's a QR code on the door on the entrance of certain buildings where you wouldn't be able to track someone's location on a multi-story shopping center. So you scan the QR code to say where you've been. So it's kind of increasing, but it's an interesting one on privacy, because I think if it means people can fully get back to not freedom, but that freedom of movement that we had, earlier in the year, then it's just a necessary step, I think, to get people moving and interacting and restarting quite a large part of the economies.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's a complex issue, and I'm not trying to put it in a box and say, well, if you've given up your privacy because you want to post photos of your kids and what you ate for dinner, you're going to be okay with Big Brother watching you. To me, it's a complex issue. I think it's important to point out that perhaps people should just be more sensitive to privacy in general and what they share. I know people that will not post pictures of their children on social media, and I respect that.
Yeah, well, there's we could discuss this all day. There's various views on it. People who are turning off Alexas at night, and these types of issues as well. But in terms of what you're seeing then in terms of not just privacy but data, digital in water specifically, how do you see what we're currently witnessing in terms of very digitally mature companies and utilities being able to operate business as usual to some extent? Do you see it impacting the adoption of digital? Or
absolutely. I wanted to go back and focus on posting photos of food and martinis, but we'll move on.
We should check out your Instagram account for those martini shots.
Yeah, you should. It might be shocking, actually. But
I thought you were a whiskey drinker anyway, not martinis.
Yeah, whiskey and martinis. Let's save that for another episode. We can cover cocktails.
The stream after hours. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Digital and water.
All right, so I'll get back on point. Before I answer that question, I was reflecting back on some of the thought pieces that have been published and some of the things that I participated in particular the IWA Xylem Digital Water Report, which was, in my view, a great piece of work. And that really talked about the digital transformation of the water sector, based on a lot of interviews and research and so on. And it was, in many respects, in hindsight, sort of this academic exercise of this is a maturity curve, this is an adoption curve, and this is what it will take to get over some of the challenges. Well, we've blown through that in a relatively short period of time, and I don't want to make a broad generalization, but I think in a lot of ways there's a recognition that analog is not going to get it done anymore. So we have to move towards a digital world in both the water, wastewater utility sector, but also on the industrial side. Now it's a matter of how. So there's no longer, in my view, a question of, well, why? Life is good, I don't need to do it. It's a series of questions of, transforming the workforce. It's, ability to pay, who will pay for it, and ensuring the adoption, as opposed to questioning whether there's real value in digital technologies. So, for me, that's looking back a little bit on a historical footnote and an important piece of work that was published and where we're at right now. And, I'm certainly seeing digital technology companies, startups, do really well in the marketplace right now in terms of interest, new clients, scaling their business. I think it's a new world.
Yeah, something I'm hearing from a lot of companies in terms of plant automation and data that are saying they're busier than ever because giving workforces, utilities, data to continue, and potentially plan for, staff illness, staff absenteeism.
Right.
Saw the survey from the AWWA that's saying that's one of the biggest concerns amongst water companies is how to kind of plan around potential gaps in the workforce. And I think the companies that have made the investment into digital, that have got their data sets all sorted, are really seeing the dividends right now. But I think the important part of the discussion is the culture point, because we know that the hardware and the software is available to generate lots of data, to create the full digital twin model that we've seen and we've talked about in Spanish cities such as Valencia. But often a part of the digital jigsaw puzzle, I think, that's left out is how can you get everyone to see the value in it and adopt it within an organization that perhaps is less experienced with new digital solutions than before.
I agree. We the royal tend to forget the human piece of the puzzle in all of this, and that digital is really cool. We absolutely need it. However, there's the learning curve. There is capacity building. There is training a workforce, and not just in the water sector. I mean, seeing educators challenged in this area. Also, my sister's a fourth grade teacher in New York, and she has been on this sort of hockey stick learning curve with digital. There's also another piece of the puzzle here, in that certainly it's the workforce piece of the puzzle, but also connectivity to customers and consumers. So how do you, as a utility or an industry, better connect to your customers and consumers via digital to build trust and transparency and assurance of safety and things like that. So it's managing the asset, it's managing the supply, but it's also that other end of the human value chain, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, I reported on a story a couple of years ago, because I've always wondered. I mean, I've written about water and the water sector since 2010. Is how can we get everyday just people to take more of an interest in water? Because I think that's, if you can get the buy-in from consumers and get them really engaged with what their water companies are doing, that can be half the battle. I think a mutual friend of ours, Dragan Savic, often quotes the figure that people in developed nations think about water for about 9 minutes per year, either when paying a bill or complaining about something. And so I think part of the puzzle that's missing is how can we get people to think, to value, to really see, to see the value of what's being delivered to them as well. And I think through gamification, through software, through data,
yes,
this is one potential answer that could help.
I completely agree with Dragan. I'd say that maybe in the US it's not even 9 minutes, but in terms of paying attention. So yeah, I mean, water is an invisible resource. We pay almost nothing for it, and that's not to imply that we need to spike, the price of water, but we need to certainly value it. And without spinning off into another conversation, I think that ties into the other things that we don't value in society that are now absolutely critical. So healthcare, first responders, educators, the people that are sheltering in place, ensuring that water and wastewater treatment facilities continue to operate. So, they're sort of invisible until you have a crisis. And, I am hopeful that one of the many things we learn is that wow, yeah, this human capital that's delivering all these things that we've taken for granted need to be treated better. So, yeah.
I think that's a good point. Yeah, we can definitely riff some more on that in future episodes. But Will, there's something really, really important that we need to speak about. Something very serious, business related, and that's the shirts that you're wearing.
Oh,
because some of the feedback we had from the pilot episode and the social media posts was about this hashtag flannel shirts that's going on. And I have to admit, we need to be careful with the translation, because I was thinking about this. In England, a flannel also translates to a square of cloth that you use to wash for hygiene reasons. So we would also call it a checked shirt. So, but nice choice today, by the way, on the blue
thank
number.
You. This is my favorite checked shirt. How's that?
This is my second favorite flannel shirt. So between the two of us, I think.
Oh, good. This is a cross-cultural exchange here. I love it. On that serious note, we do need to think about pivoting into summer wear. So,
yeah, I think we had someone
but
comment about Hawaiian shirts. Could be an option, summer edition. But this is a nice segue, because we've kind of said we are going to feature guests on the stream, people that are very optimistic, people that are innovative, people that are kind of forward-looking and futuristic in what they're bringing to the market. I know we've already looked at guests involved in blockchain for water security, as well as vertical farming with solutions that use 97% water. So some really cool guests we've got coming up on the show, and we're going to mandate that they have to wear a flannel or checked shirt, right?
Or Hawaiian,
or
Tom,
this is endless. We can exhaust this for ages.
I've seen you in a tuxedo, so I wouldn't rule that out.
We should do a kind of 1 year celebratory edition in black tie. I'm all for that.
Okay. Deal. You have a deal.
Good. Well, Will, nice speaking with you. This for episode 2. For people who have liked what you've heard, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you follow and download the podcasts across Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and also Stitcher. And we look forward to coming back in another couple of weeks with our first guest. So, Will, always a pleasure. Keep strong, keep the faith, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Sounds great. Tom, be safe. Have a good week.
You too.